Okay. So this is a meeting of the Tuesday night chanting group, online chanting group, on Tuesday, October 7th. And tonight is the first Tuesday of October, so we are having our monthly chanting discussion. And I've suggested, we'll see how it goes, but I've suggested that we talk about mantras. Um, so, what do people think about discussing mantras? Is that an interesting topic? And in particular, are there any mantras that people would like to talk about, that you have an interest in, or that you do? Now, if you do, oh, go ahead. Somebody's going to, yeah, Tom.
Do you consider? I have a mantra
Mm-hmm.
that I repeat using my beads,
Mm-hmm.
and but I'm not sure you even consider it a
Ah.
mantra, so I'd like
Mm-hmm.
to hear your thoughts about that.
Uh-huh.
So what I do is taking refuge in the Buddha, taking
Mm-hmm.
refuge in the Sangha, taking refuge in the Dharma.
Mm-hmm.
Repeated in that case, then each 27 times.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when I sit for meditation. Typically, what I'm going to do is when I first sit down, I may or may not do a body scan.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Frequently, I with or the I do then is the taking refuge,
Mm-hmm.
um, using my mouth, and gets me settled enough then that typically at that point I can start, into some deeper meditation.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And that's definitely a mantra. So, in my opinion, it's definitely a mantra. Now, some people have very, and I don't want to, be judgmental or, disagreeable, but, so other people have much more, um, uh, I don't know, narrow definitions of what is a mantra and what is not. And in my opinion, anything that comes from, so for a Buddhist, anything that comes from Buddhist teachings, that one repeats as a practice, that's a mantra. Um, and there are actually multiple ways that you can do taking refuge or uh, uh, taking refuge in the three jewels as a mantra, and that's one of them right there. But one that I do every day as a short practice is, and Namo Buddhaya, Namo Sangaya, Namo. No, it's Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sangaya, and it's got a little tune to it. And you repeat it like three times or whatever. Um, and then there's a Pali version of that, which is each line ends with Gachami, or anyway. But there's lots of different practices that are, in, like I said, in my opinion, by my criteria, which is very loose, count as mantra practice. And there's anyway. So I saw you unmuted, Matt. You want to jump in?
Well,
Oh yeah, okay, sure, sure,
in
Tom.
our liturgy every week,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because we do at temple we do a service that's about 20
Uh-huh.
minutes.
Uh-huh.
We have a set liturgy that we do every week. So we repeat the Sanskrit there. The
Mm-hmm.
Buddham Saramam
Mm-hmm.
Gacchami,
Yeah, right.
Dhammam Saramam Gacchami,
Yes.
Sangham Saramam Gacchami. We repeat that in our liturgy every week. So,
Yeah. And so chanting and mantras, they blur into each other. You can do a mantra silently, as part of a more like a sitting meditation practice, and it may not seem like it's chanting, but if you do it out loud, then all of a sudden your mantra practice is now chanting practice.
And I'm sorry, Matt. I yield the floor.
No, it's okay. Yeah, so I chant the Pali three jewels,
Mm-hmm.
taking refuge. Um, my mantras, I don't like have a specific mantra practice. I just
Mm-hmm.
do them when I feel it's appropriate.
Yeah.
I also chant the name of Amitabha. I
Yeah.
chant Jijiang. I chant
Mm-hmm.
Guansil. Um, and I chant Om Mani Padme Hum, which I learned recently that is used in all kinds of different traditions all over the world, and not just Tibetan Buddhism. I'd always associate
Yeah.
with Tibetan.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I kind of I go back and forth in those worlds. But Zen Master Sung San taught everybody to chant Om Mani Padme Hum as part of the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra. Um, and it's a very, I mean, and the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra is about as Korean Buddhist as you can get. Um, so it's very much a part of the mainstream Korean Buddhist tradition, chanting that. And the Koreans, I love it. The Koreans have, I can never remember it. They have like the really long name for it's the, yeah, I can look it up but it's a, it's one of the mantras where the full name of the mantra is longer than the mantra itself. And you mentioned chanting the Amitabha's name, Jijang Boso's name, and that's another what some people might consider a gray area are those mantras. As far as I'm concerned, they absolutely are mantras, and the Buddha taught, Shakyamuni Buddha taught the practice of reciting the names of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. There's many sutras where he teaches that. In fact, in the sutra that the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra comes from, which is the oh, yeah, I always blank on it when I try to remember the name of the sutra. But it's a the basket display sutra is the English name of it, but nobody uses that name usually. But anyway, in that sutra, Om Mani Padme Hum is repeatedly referred to as one of the names of Avalokiteshvara. So that's also a practice of that's also like like saying Kwanzaa Bosal. Um, you're repeating the name of Avalokiteshvara when you say Namu Amitabha. I mean Om Mani Padme Hum.
That's surprising to me. uh,
Yeah.
Given that my understanding is Om Mani Padme Hum is the jewel in the lotus,
Mm-hmm.
and that would reference the Buddha to me. So it
Mm-hmm.
surprises me that it's a quote name for Avalokiteshvara.
Yeah. And it's another thing that's in the that sutra is it's made very clear in that sutra that Avalokiteshvara is a Buddha, um, as well as being able to manifest as a Bodhisattva. And so that's another place where distinctions get blurred um, between Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so um, two mantras. Well, one mantra that I wanted to talk about a little bit, which is another example of a mantra where the title of the mantra is longer than the mantra itself, is a mantra that I know is of interest to Tom, which is the Om Nam mantra.
Yeah.
And that's another one that's in the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra. And so it's a good example uh, of how useful it can be to know the official title for a mantra. So the official title for that mantra is And by official title, I mean you're being able to write it out, or not necessarily write it out, but being able to uh, write it out or whatever in Chinese characters, the hanja of the title. Because once you have that, then you can search around. And you can, and so if you have, in fact, I can, since I'm talking about that, I will bring it up. Let's see. Oh, yeah, I do have something to show on that. So is that okay? Can we talk about the Om Nam mantra for a little bit?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would love to do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Good evening, Cynthia.
So I'm going to security cameras. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and put up some PowerPoint slides here that are. I'm not sure if I ever used these slides in a presentation in any other context, but this is from some slides that I put together on the Hands and Eyes Sutra, since this mantra is part of the Hands and Eyes Sutra. It's one of the many mantras that found in the Hands and Eyes Sutra. And so, yeah, and so here's the title when we chant. This is very common when a mantra is included in a chant, as which happens in Kwanzaa Bosal chanting and Jijang Bosal chanting, and in the evening bell chant. Every time we chant the evening bell chant, we chant the mantra for shattering hell. And typically, what happens in a chant, when a mantra is included in a chant, you say the title of the mantra once, and then you repeat the mantra at least 3 times. And the standard is to say the title of the mantra once, and then to recite the mantra 3 times. And so, Jong Bopke Jinon is the title of the Om Nam mantra, and it means, so Jong means, Jong is the purity. Or pure means purity, purification, and Bopke means Dharma realm. Okay, and I can make this bigger. Can I make it bigger? I think I can. Oh yeah, see how big I can make it. That's weird. So you can see these characters. Let's see, make it as big as possible. Yeah. So Jong, this character here, and let me see if I can find that somewhere else. Believe this is in the Heart Sutra. Oh yeah, when we recited in the Heart Sutra that nothing is pure or impure. I believe this is the pure in the Heart Sutra that nothing is. Let's see if I can find it in the Heart Sutra. Yeah. Yeah, and so, purity being obviously an important idea in Buddhism, purity and purification. So this is, now I know, what's Dagok's favorite way of describing this mantra, Tom? I know you like to talk about that.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm going to change my microphone. I'm sorry. I need to be able to hear me a little better now.
It's not as high a volume, but it's a little more clear.
Okay. Let's see if I'm doing this right. Oh, yeah. How about this? This should be good. Well, anyway, so I know you've told the story before about you talking to Zen Master Dagok about this mantra and his description of it.
Yeah. His description of it is he said, well, it's kind of a universal stain remover.
Right, and so this character Jung is purification, and Bopge. So Dharma realm is a term that shows up around in Buddhism. From my understanding, and if anybody else has a different understanding or wants to add to the discussion on what Dharma realm means, it kind of means everything, the universe. And then Jinon, these two characters, this is the the Chinese way of saying mantra. So in the Jinon means literally this character in Chinese means true, and this character means words. And so there's a school of Buddhism in Japanese Buddhism that's called Shingon, and that's the Japanese pronunciation of these two characters, and so they are the mantra school. The Shingon, if you're familiar with Japanese Buddhism, they're kind of the esoteric. They're like the Vajrayana of Japanese Buddhism, and another word for Tibetan Buddhism or Vajrayana Buddhism is Mantrayana. And so a lot of times people associate mantra practice with esoteric Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism or Vajrayana Buddhism, but actually pretty much all Mahayana Buddhists practice mantra practice to some extent. Anyway, so that's just to go into that's just the title of this mantra, Zhong Bopge Jinon. And once you know the title of that, then you can find out other things about it. So I'm gonna change the view back to where we can see things. Okay. So these are one of these links no longer works, I think. But this is once you know the title of a mantra using the Chinese characters, and this. Oops, I don't want to edit this. This character is slightly different in Korean. The Koreans prefer a slightly different way of writing Jinon or mantra from what the Japanese and the Vietnamese and the Chinese, but they're all writing the same thing. It's just differences. Basically, it's differences in font. You can think of it. But all these other characters are exactly the same as what I showed on the previous slide, much smaller here. Jung Bopge Jinon. And then let's see, what do we get if we looked at this? A lot of times mantra videos are a little overproduced, in my opinion.
净法界真言 Om Ram Swaha Om Ram Swaha Om Ram Swaha Om Ram Swaha.
Right, you get the point pretty quickly. So this is all. I'm going to go on and say all mantras are originally in Sanskrit, and even when we pronounce them in the Korean style of pronouncing them, we're still approximating the Sanskrit pronunciation. It's like when English speakers say Om Mani Padme Hum, or when English speakers say Gate Gate Paragate Parasam Gate Bodhisvaha, we are approximating the Sanskrit, and we can spell it out using letters that we know how to pronounce, and then we can pronounce it as best as we can, but we're still approximating the Sanskrit sound. And so Chinese and Korean and Vietnamese people do the same, and Tibetans do the same too. Tibetans have their own kind of style of pronouncing Sanskrit, and somehow in the Korean version of this mantra, the Ram became Nam. And so Ram is a Sanskrit seed syllable. And I don't know, does anybody have anything to say about the meaning or significance of the seed syllable Ram? I mean, there's probably a lot that can be said about it. But it's interesting to know that that's where it comes from originally. And then, as also often happens with mantras, people often like to have svaha or sabaha at the end of a mantra. So in the Korean version, it's not. The Korean version is just Om Nam. In the kind of Sanskritized version that many Chinese speaking Buddhists use. It's Ram, and then Svaha is added on at the end. In fact, some people believe, again, one of the ideas that some people have about mantras is that mantras always have to start with Om and always have to end with Svaha or Sabaha. And so if it's not there, they'll just tack it on. They'll put Om on at the beginning or put Sabaha or Svaha on at the end and say, now it's a mantra, which is, okay. And sometimes people put other, so there are other things that can go at the beginning, like Namu. Sometimes mantras begin with Namu, which just means I take homage in, or take refuge in, pay homage to, or bow down. Literally it means bow down to. And sometimes mantras end with Hum, and there's some other seed syllables that also. But if it doesn't have something at the beginning that looks like the beginning of a mantra, or something at the end that looks like it, people will just add them on. But this is I just think it's interesting that you'll find this, and again, there's different explanations. It always means the same thing. Something about purification, and something about the Dharma realm, or all of reality, or whatever. This is a mantra for purifying stuff. For purifying basically whatever needs to be purified. Now there's another mantra that occurs right after that in the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra, which is another very short mantra, almost as short, which is the let's see. I'm going to make this big again. So this has a different character that also, so this character means to protect. Sorry, I'm trying to highlight it, but then my PowerPoint wants to show up a toolbar to block. But so the first character means to protect, and the second character means body. So this is the body protection mantra. Like I said, once you know the title of a mantra, you can find other examples of it, because and here's a good one. This is kind of an interesting video of a teacher who's not.
第二个要保护你自己，保护你自己。来，左手拇指头按在倒数第4支。
So he's demonstrating a kind of a mudra that you can use along with this mantra, and it's not just a mudra; it's a mudra with a certain kind of gesture.
这个叫金刚拳手印，放在你的腰，念一下 Om Chrin Om Chrin。
And see, everybody at the audience is doing it along with him.
你念这个，那就守护你自己，不会被那些妖魔鬼怪干扰。保护你自己，保护周围，保护环境，念3遍 Om Chrin， 这个叫文殊一字咒。然后
I don't know what he's saying, other than he's saying this mantra. So in the Korean version, we say Om Chirim, and in the let's see if does he provide there. I don't know. I could probably find that's probably another Sanskrit seed syllable, or possibly 2 seed syllables that are put together. That Om Shirim or something like that. So that's the mantra. That's another mantra that is part of the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra. And then right after that, right after those 2 mantras, comes here it is, the full title. The Kwanseum Bosal Bonchim Mimyo Yukja Daemyong Wang Jinon. That's the title of the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra in Korean, which means the mantra expressing the subtle mystery of the fundamental mind of Kwanseum, the magnificently bright 6-syllable king of mantras. And actually, often that is probably better translated as queen of mantras, because at least in Korean Buddhism and generally in East Asian Buddhism, this is always associated with Avalokiteshvara in her female form as Kuan Yin or Kwanzaa Bosal or Kanzeon. And again, this is another good example of this is my favorite example of a mantra with the title that's much longer than the full. And then so these three mantras then are followed in the sometimes it's actually I've read it said or read it that the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra actually has 108 mantras in it, which I've counted them. There aren't 108 in total, but there are a bunch of them, and they're interesting. But the one that comes right after this is the Junjie mantra, and here's a bunch of links to. Let's see what's on the next slide here. Now the Junjie. Let's see. Oh yeah. All right. So the Junjie mantra, which is the Junjie Jinon. So Junjie is a bodhisattva, another one of these bodhisattvas who's also essentially a Buddha as well. Oh yeah. And so the and this is another interesting thing that happens in quite a few mantras, that mantras often have like a preamble. And you can tell, and this is true in the Great Dharani. The Great Dharani has a preamble, which and the Medicine Buddha mantra also has a preamble. And one of the ways that you can tell when a mantra has a preamble is if you get to a point in the mantra where it says Danyata, which is Sanskrit. So this is the Korean pronunciation of the Sanskrit word. This is not a seed syllable. This is a word in ordinary Sanskrit that has an ordinary meaning, and it just means it's Teata. Teata is kind of another way of mispronouncing it. I think Teata is the way that the English speakers who practice Tibetan Buddhism usually will say Teata in one of these mantras that has these in it. So it just means it goes like this. So there's a part of the mantra which is kind of describing what the mantra is about that's built into the mantra, and then it says it goes like this. So in this case it says, homage to the mother of 7 fully enlightened Buddhas. 7, actually I think it's more like 7 billion. I think it's more than 7, but anyway, homage to the mother of 7 billion fully enlightened Buddhas. It goes like this. And then we get to the part that when chanting the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra, one doesn't repeat the preamble, the part that includes Danyata. One only repeats the Om Jare Jure Junje Sabaha Buddhim. And it's interesting that if you're familiar with the this is another mantra that is very popular in Tibetan Buddhism and in lots of other forms of Buddhism, and usually these last 2 syllables are not included in other. This is another Sanskrit seed syllable. This is actually the seed syllable brum, which for whatever reason Korean Buddhists, at least when chanting the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra, the Koreans can't say brum as a single syllable. So they break it up into burim, and actually spell it out with these 2 characters here. This is burim, spelled out or sounded out using hamja. Om Jare Jure Junje Sabaha Buddhim. So outside of chanting the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra, has anyone ever chanted or encountered the Junjie mantra or the Chundi mantra or Junte mantra? Anyway, the Junjie is a very popular bodhisattva in among Mahayana Buddhists. She's I think of her as kind of Kwanzaa Bosal's big sister. Because Junjie is a little more fierce in her in the way that she's usually portrayed, and she's one of the bodhisattvas who is especially considered to be, as it says here, the mother. Actually, so this says the mother of 7 fully enlightened Buddhas. I said it's more like the mother of 7 billion Buddhas is the way that I see. Oh yeah, this Gucci right here means billion, or this is if you know a little Sanskrit, koti is a Sanskrit word for, it means a really, really big number, like a billion. And also, if you're familiar with the koan, Gucci's One Finger Zen. Anybody ever heard of that koan? If you've read the Compass of Zen by Zen Master Sung San, it's my favorite part of that book, is when he tells the story of Guji and his famous One Finger Zen. He was called Guji because his practice was reciting this mantra. And when he recited the mantra, he included the preamble as part of the mantra that he repeated. And he always emphasized, I just hit my microphone, sorry. He always emphasized Guji when he got to that part of the mantra. And so everybody just called him, that became his nickname, Gucci. That's actually where he got his name from. Oh yeah, but so and that is also that story is kind of a funny story about how he got that nickname, but it's also a it gives you some indication that the Guji or Junjie is actually a kind of a big deal generally in East Asian Buddhism, and this whole actually, if we go back a little bit, let's see what else I got here. Oh, yeah. Oh, no, not that.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The section of the if you look at the structure of the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra, it has actually a fairly long section of it that is primarily focused on Junjie Bosal, and it culminates or kind of peaks when you get to the part where we recite Om Jare Jure Junjie Sabaha Buddham, Om Jare Jure Junjie Sabaha Buddham. And if you wanted to, you can use this, and I know that Zen Master Degak has, in fact, used this as a mantra himself. It's Junjie Bosal. In addition, if you've ever seen an official chanting book, which has, so you can tell if you're looking at an official chanting book, Korean Buddhist chanting book, you can tell it's official if it has footnotes. Okay, and so there will be a footnote for when you get to, at some point when you get to Junjie Bosal, and if you look in the back, it'll say 2 things about Junjie Bosal. One is that she is the mother of all the Buddhas, and the second is that she is the bodhisattva of magical powers. And so if you ever really need something that seems impossible, this is a mantra to use for that. And actually, Zen Master Degak was, at least the story that I've heard from Zen Master Degak, and I think it's okay to share this story because he talks about it, that one time when he was in the process of building the temple at Furnace Mountain, and it was difficult. There was a lot of work to be done. There was a lot of money that needed to be raised, and it was not always clear that it was going to be possible. And so Zen Master Sung San told him to use this mantra, and the temple got built. I mean, the Zen Master Degak and a lot of other people still had to do a tremendous amount of work and raise a lot of money, and it did not happen magically, but it did happen. And so if you are willing to put in the work and really committed to doing something, but it seems, and it's preferably something good for the Dharma and for the benefit of all beings, but if it's starting to look like it's impossible, this is a good mantra to use. Or so I've been told. Om Jara Juri Junjie Sabaha Buddhim. Okay, all right. I've been talking enough.
So for me, this discussion, rather than more questions about mantras, has prompted in me questions about the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra. It seems like a collection of disparate parts. And is that, does that seem to be, is that common? Is that first of all accurate? And is it common?
So I wouldn't say that the parts are disparate. So there's a long tradition going back to like the Sung dynasty, or maybe even back further to the Tang dynasty. So the popularity of the Great Dharani goes back to the Tang dynasty, which is like over 1,000 years ago, and we know that because there were 17, at least 17 translations made of the sutra that introduced the Great Dharani, or the sutra that has the Great Dharani in it. And that number of translations indicates the popularity of the people. I mean, each of those translations had to be done by a group of people who were translators, and it also meant that their translations had to be published, which was they didn't have the internet back then, so publishing meant you had to carve wood blocks and make prints of what you were making. So it was a big undertaking, and so for that to have been undertaken 17 different times, at least, is considered to be an evidence of the great interest in the Great Dharani at that time. And one of the reasons for the great interest in the Great Dharani was that people believe and actually have experience that the Great Dharani works. You know, the Great Dharani is of great benefit. The chanting the Great Dharani is something that actually shifts something, moves something, does something. And what Buddhist teachers tried to do, at least starting in the Sung dynasty, was to get people to not just use the Great Dharani to get stuff, right? Which they do. I mean, people chant. People want something. Like it's still a very popular mantra among students before they take a test to chant the Great Dharani. I've known people in medical school who have, and of course, it only works if you studied. But no matter how hard you study, you can still bomb. You know, you can still screw up. No matter how well prepared you are for anything, when the time comes when it has to be done, you always need a little extra help to ensure that all your preparation works, you know, and that you don't blank, you don't choke. And so for someone who is well prepared, the Great Dharani is basically like an anti-choking spell. And so people will use that. I mean, hopefully people will do it for good things. So the people that I've known who've used it before tests have been like medical students or whatever. So that, I mean, that's good. We need doctors, and it's good for people to become doctors. But also there's a plaque at the headquarters of the Quantum School of Zen in North America. There's a big pagoda that was built, and part of the money for that pagoda came from a woman who had terrible problems in her life, and Zen Master Sung San told her to just chant the Great Dharani. I think he said chant the Great Dharani 1,000,000 times, I believe is the story. Yeah, you have to see, there's a plaque up there. There's this big pagoda. It's huge. And she chanted the Great Dharani 1,000,000 times, and I believe the story is that all of her health problems went away and her business thrived, and she made a lot of money and donated a lot of money to Zen Master Sung San. Anyway, so what Buddhist teachers did was they wanted to harness that intense interest that people had in chanting the Great Dharani because of its benefits that they they receive from it, and to make it a little, make it more spiritual, make it more, to more clearly get people to focus their minds on the spiritual nature of the Great Dharani. It's like Zen Master Sung San chanted the Great Dharani and attained his great awakening when he was like 19 years old or whatever it was, when he was, that was how he became a Zen master. So he didn't chant it to pass a test or to get a new car or to get a promotion on his job. He chanted it as a clearly, well, in order to become enlightened, which he did. And so anyway, this is a long-winded answer, but the story is that many different teachers devised basically ceremonies, Buddhist ceremonies that involve taking refuge, doing repentance, and at the end. So at the end of the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra, we chant the four great vows, and then we also at the end, the very end of the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra is yet another kind of mantra that could be used for taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Anyway, I can, but it is a and so many of the ceremonies that were devised, and so the centerpiece of all those ceremonies then was to repeat the Great Dharani. Okay, so the Great Dharani is embedded inside of the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra, and the way that Zen Master Sung San taught his students to chant it as part of a daily practice is just to recite the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra once. Generally speaking, when Korean Buddhists chant the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra, they will often recite the Great Dharani at least 3 times, if not 6 or 7 or 21, or once you get up to 21 times, it takes a while to get through the Great Dharani 21 times. But if you're familiar with the Chinese Zen master Sheng Yen, is very well known. At least I know of him. I have a couple of his books, but he once did a 6-year-long retreat, and as part of his 6-year-long retreat, he did, it wasn't exactly the same as our Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra, but he did the version of the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra that is a part of his tradition, and he recited the Great Dharani, and it's a slightly different version of the Great Dharani. It was very, very, very similar and has the same, originally the same as ours, at least 6 times, maybe 21 times every day for 6 years. Zen Master Sung San, when he did his 100-day retreat, he chanted the Great Dharani over and over again every day for 100 days, 20 hours a day, without stop. Only sleeping for 4 hours, So that's another way of doing it. But anyway, all these other things that are added on in the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra are all kind of like an enclosure for, I guess you could say, for the Great Dharani. And there have been many different. There are many of these rituals or ceremonies or whatever you want to call them. Like the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra. And also the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra has evolved over time. But so it does have different parts. The parts actually all fit together. And it's interesting to look through them. And the parts with the mantras that I was just talking about, with the Om Nam and Om Chirim and the Om Mani Padme Hum, and then the Junjay, Om Jari Juri Junjay Sabaha Burim. You can find many sources for using that combination of mantras. That's kind of a known piece that's kind of been put into it, and it's obviously since the Great Dharani is a mantra of So in the Great Dharani is a mantra of Avalokiteshvara, and Om Mani Padme Hum is also a mantra of Avalokiteshvara. In the sutra where Avalokiteshvara first taught the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra, and it's actually a fairly long sutra. It takes a while before there's a lot of references to the famous 6-syllable mantra before the mantra is actually in the sutra, and when the mantra is finally revealed in the sutra, immediately afterwards everybody recites the Junjie mantra. And so there's no explanation of that. There's no explanation that's given in the sutra, but there is some traditional association between the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra and Junjie Bosal and Junjie's mantra. So they kind of fit together. You can read things into the different parts, and it can be kind of interesting. But I think that people just find that it's like the Great Dharani itself, or the Heart Sutra, or any of these other things. You have to do the practice and see what happens. I don't know. That was a long answer. That was a long-winded response. So it's definitely there's a structure to the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra. It's put together, and it also has evolved over time. And there's also many different variations on this idea of having like a practice that includes the Great Dharani in it, but also includes a bunch of other stuff.
So there's this Japanese mantra
Mm-hmm.
that I've heard. First time I heard it, uh, and I never. It's not as important to me, so I never totally remember it.
Mm-hmm.
But the first time I heard it, I was in the army, and I was stationed in Hawaii. I was
Mm-hmm.
stationed at Schofield Barracks on Oahu, and one evening, a couple other guys and I went down in Honolulu. There was a little, I don't know what to call it. It was in a house. But it was allegedly a small temple. And the monks there were telling us it's the Renge Kyo.
Oh yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wish I had it all. It's like when I try and
Yeah.
remember
Mm-hmm.
certain things, of course they immediately vanish.
Yeah.
It'll
Of
come
course.
back. But,
Yeah.
um,
Nam Yoho Renge Kyo.
and again, please.
Nam Yoho Renge Kyo.
Yes, and I almost rather they were couching it like you say people use the Great Dharani.
Yeah. Yes.
That you recited this to get things, and I found it honestly. I found it a little off-putting
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because they were saying all you have to do is recite this and you get everything in the world, everything you want, all success, uh, and and it actually made me take a couple steps back at
Mm-hmm.
that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you or anybody have a comment on that? No.
Yeah, that's Nichiren Buddhism. Nichiren, so Nam-myoho Renge Kyo is the opening line for the Lotus Sutra. It means like the Great Sutra or whatever. and Nichiren taught this subsect. Nichiren thought that he was Maitreya, like the Buddha Maitreya, bringing the true Dharma back to the world.
Yeah.
And so he taught this thing. It's called the Daimoku, which is reciting the Nam Myoho Renge Kyo as a mantra. And Nichiren Buddhism has a sect in America, and I think they're kind of a little culty. They feel kind of weird. They also, it's like the major school of Buddhism in Japan. They control like the main political party is really involved with them. It's kind of weird. Maybe someone else knows more about it than I do.
Yeah, Buddhism always gets weird when there's. I mean, if you have more than just a few Buddhists, with you only have a small number of Buddhists, no money, no power, everything's fine. Okay, you get
By the way,
more Buddhists with money and power, then things get weird.
that's our little Tulsa group. So
Yeah, right. So you're okay.
yeah,
Yeah. But I mean,
yeah.
and that's true for any religion or ideology, I think. I mean, so Tina Turner is a Nichiren Buddhist, I believe. I think I'm getting that
She
right.
used to be. She still does the
Hmm.
practice, but she
Hmm.
doesn't consider herself a
Oh,
Buddhist
she's
anymore.
yeah, okay. Oh, she doesn't consider herself a Buddhist anymore at all.
Or she considers
Or
herself a Buddhist, but she
yeah,
stopped doing the practice. It's one of
yeah,
the two.
yeah, okay. But
Yeah.
it seems to have done a lot of good for her, and um, I'm all for people finding benefit from their practice. And it's so then the anyway, so the if you read the Lotus Sutra, there's a lot of emphasis in the Lotus Sutra on skillful means, and one of the most important kinds of skillful means in Buddhism is to relate to people's desire for a better situation in their life. And so in the Lotus Sutra, it's made very explicit. There's a whole chapter in the Lotus Sutra devoted to the benefits of calling on the name of Avalokiteshvara. And it'll protect you from fire and flood and thieves and diseases and snake bites and everything else, falling off cliffs. And I mean, there's a lot of different, but and then of course at the end of the list it also says and any other kind of calamity or whatever. But and I'm sure that this is emphasized by the Nichiren's as well. The catch is always that you have to do it with great sincerity and great singleness of mind, and your sincerity and singleness of mind, of course, is focused on the bodhisattva of compassion. And so, whatever material or mundane benefit you get from doing that practice, and anytime we learn to better focus our minds, we benefit from that. And of course, the thing we have to be careful about is what do we focus our minds on. So you can focus your mind and become a really good bank robber or a ninja assassin or whatever, or an insurance salesman, or I mean, and I'm not dissing ninja assassins or bank robbers or insurance salesmen, but there are lots of things that you can focus your mind on to become really good at. And it works. If you focus your mind, if you really focus, you can become good at things. You can't necessarily fly, but you can, whatever. But at least if everything works properly in this, whether it's Nichiren or any other school of Buddhism, you're being encouraged to focus your mind on something that is intrinsically good.
Yeah. So that's what when you said with sincerity, that took
Yes.
me to like the preeminence of intent.
Hmm.
And when
Yeah.
we talk about skillful means,
Hmm.
uh, often skillful means involves lying, right, and telling falsehoods. And yet, if I think what makes it okay is that you have a positive intent
Hmm.
to help beings and to help people by those skillful means.
And so different people have different takes on skillful means, but in my opinion, it's actually never untrue. So the it should always be true. So the story, the kind of the one of the main stories about skillful means is the story about the kids who are in the
Burning house.
burning house, and the father tells them the house is on fire, you have to get out, and they won't come out. Or the only way you can get them to come out is to offer them new cars, basically. It's chariots. This was before the invention of the automobile, obviously, 2,000 years before the invention. So he offered them chariots. And when they came out of the house, they got chariots that were even better than the ones that he had told them about to get them to come out of the house. So at least in that version of the story, it, there might be times, and of course, if you've ever had kids, which I never have, but I mean, of course you have to lie to your kids sometimes. You tell them you can't do that, or I mean, so you have two choices: one, you lie to them, or you have to train them to say, just do it because I said so. But just doing it because I said so sometimes this doesn't quite work. So you have to like go even further, and you have to give them something that they can understand, which is not necessary. It might be misrepresentation of the way an adult sees things, but unless you can communicate things, and so to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, we are children, so they have to give us things in a way that we can understand, and in a way that will motivate us. And sometimes that means we don't realize that we're in a burning house. I mean, that's the biggest message of the Lotus Sutra, is that we are all in a burning house and we don't realize it. We hope that Buddhism is going to help us and make us happy. And so we chant the Great Dharani, and it is good for us.
Yeah.
And yes, I think we're in a burning house. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
When my daughter asks me, my daughter's 4 years old, when she asks me things, I have to tell them to her in a way that she can grasp. If she
Right.
asks me, where does the sun go when the sun sets, like, I'm not going to explain to her the movement of the planets. The father sun goes to sleep. He goes to his golden palace and goes to sleep.
Right.
And she feels more connected to the earth. She feels more connected to the world around her to hear the story than she would if I explained space and all this sciencey stuff. And in time, her understanding will grow, and she'll come to understand that what I told her wasn't a lie. It was a form of truth that conveyed something more than just the father sun is a living thing that goes to sleep. It conveyed a sort of truth, and I think that a lot of upaya is about conveying a kind of truth.
Yeah.
It's kind of in that similar vein. A lot of upaya isn't about lying or misrepresenting the truth. It's more about conveying something that is a way of looking at things that isn't the way that we always use. Because I mean, everything we say is basically a lie if you want to get really technical, because nothing really encapsulates the truth. It's just our personal perspective.
Right. And there's there's a conventional truth and the ultimate truth. From the ultimate perspective, there are no sentient beings, there is no suffering, and yet the Buddhas, fortunately, all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, in their compassion for us, don't just stick to the ultimate truth. They treat us as if we are real sentient beings who really do suffer and really do need help. And it's a good thing that that's the case, because we do need help. Oops. So we're a little after going. I mean, I've got nowhere to go, but we usually we end around 8 or so, and this is a great discussion. So I don't mean to cut it off, but I think this is a fruitful thing to continue to discuss in our monthly chanting discussion, the whole area, and it also, I mean, it addresses the issue of how does this work? So there's one question is, does chanting actually do anything? Does reciting mantras actually do anything? And if so, what's that all about? Which is, we're kind of touching on that in our discussion of the Great Dharani and Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And Zen Master Degak sometimes encourages people to chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. He kind of likes that mantra, as a matter of fact.
So,
It's fun to say.
Yeah.
For a future for a future session, I would like to talk about what you were just talking about, right? The ultimate, what are we doing when we're chanting? What's our objective? What's actually happening? And, why do we undertake this practice? What do we want to achieve from it?
Yeah. To be continued. That's a good one. And a big one. And it's, it's not something that we're going to just answer and move on. For sure. Okay. So at the end, we always recite, just like we do at the end of the Thousand Hands and Eyes Sutra, recite the Four Great Vows. And so the Four Great Vows. Sentient beings are numberless. We vow to save them all. Delusions are endless. We vow to cut through them all. The teachings are infinite. We vow to learn them all. The Buddha way is inconceivable. We vow to attain it. May whatever excellent qualities we have gained from this practice be extended for the benefit of all beings. Okay, so thanks a lot for coming and talking, sharing your time and your thoughts. It's been great.
Thank you, each of you.
Good night, everyone.